Are you a fan of Stephen King's Dark Tower series? Do you like fun and or seriously unsettling actual play podcasts about dimension-hopping heroes that do battle with the forces of evil? If you answered yes, chances are you'll enjoy the War for the Tower role-playing podcast set in the world of the Dark Tower. It takes place between books 6 and 7 and aims to correct some of King's more egregious indulgences. The characters include a survivor of Jericho Hill, the High Wizard of Brooklyn, a shape-shifting badass from Dungeons & Dragons, and so much more. Find us at warforthetower.com or search War for the Tower on your podcatcher. Long days and pleasant nights, and toodaloo, motherfuckers. This is an Unspoiled Network podcast. This is Unspoiled, covering Doctor Who, Season 4, Episode 12, Turn Left. In this episode, so it seems that Donna is really fucking important in a way that she does not understand. Nobody else seems to understand it either. But there is somebody out here who is trying to change small choices in her life, one in particular, so that everything else falls apart. It's real creepy. Also, I do not like this bug and the sound it makes. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha.
I am Jamie.
So, this episode was awesome. I really liked it. It was real freaky. There were a couple of moments that I felt like they really, if they had just held back on the score, it would have been really, really moving. But most of it, I felt like worked extremely, extremely well. And I am really, really curious about what the fuck is going on with Donna. And I also love that Rose is here being like, oh yeah, I totally know what the fuck is going on. And I'm going to be the mysterious one that bounces in and out of people's lives. How do you like that, Doc?
He doesn't even know she's around.
Yep. So, yeah, overall, I give this a solid 8 out of 10. And I think Midnight will be my 10 out of 10. And Silence in the Library is an 8 out of 10. Probably the Forest of the Dead, is that what the second one's called?
Yeah.
Is 9 out of 10. So we're averaging real high this season.
Yeah, it's a really solid season.
Oh my god. Okay, so what a crazy idea this is. Okay, so we start off with them and they are on... I thought it was like Earth in the future, but at one point Donna says something about I'm from Earth, which is a planet miles away, so it's not. But it looks very much like, you know, they're trying to do something with China here.
It's like a Chinatown.
Yeah. So I assumed that it was something like that on Earth, but in the future, but no. And she and the doctor are here as tourists, just pottering around, looking at the different shops and enjoying their like time away from huge adventures and, you know, they're being on vacation basically. And it's really, really cute from the beginning.
They're trying the, you know, local cuisines. Mm-hmm. Strange things on sticks and weird foamy drinks and mugs.
Oh, does that foamy drink look awesome? I want one real bad. I just want a latte. That's what it is. Comes down to it. And there's a point in which Donna goes off by herself. And of course, like my antenna begin to go up, pun intended. And I'm like, oh shit, she's going off by herself. And this woman stops her and is asking her if she wants to get her fortune told. And Donna turns her down, and she keeps being very insistent until finally she says, "Oh, it's free today for red hair." And Donna's like, "Fine, okay." And I was just like, "Girl, with everything that y'all have run into, I want you to be more suspicious than you are. But at the same time, you can't be like out here suspicious all the time and trying to be on vacation.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to have a good time?" So this begins the sequence where this woman, allegedly, is asking her questions and getting more and more personal. She's not telling her future. She is asking for her own history. And this is one of those things that, while setting aside like anything supernatural going on here, if there is somebody who is claiming that they're going to tell you anything about yourself from the future or about like your destiny, and they start off asking you a lot of personal questions, they are fishing because they are a con artist. Mm-hmm. So just, be aware of that. It's them figuring out psychologically who you are, where you're at, what your priorities have been previously in life, and therefore what path you are likely to go down, because you and all of us are predictable AF. So that's what I started to think, was like she was like, conning her. Mm-hmm. But then there's this thing that starts to happen where Donna has like, it's almost like that moment right when you start to fall asleep. That stomach dropping moment that can sometimes cause you to wake up.
Yeah, where your whole body jolts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the sense that I got from the way that she played the moment, was that it was like, or she goes into a memory and it's like kind of a whooshing feeling. And she immediately is like, "What was that?" And the woman tries to say, "Oh, sorry, it's the incense. Just breathe deeply." Yeah. And as she's saying this, we see something coming up on the floor behind her.
Little claw hands.
It's like, at first, it's just the camera shot from behind her. Then it's like a sound, which I'm not a fan of at all. And then we begin to see these little, like, pincer. And I immediately thought of, like, a June bug or something.
Which is not far off.
No, yeah. It was like a scarab, kind of. Mm-hmm. And we begin to see some of her other memories, because it starts off with stuff that we know already about the various decisions that led up to meeting the doctor. But we start to go even further back, and we get into this moment in the car with her mother, where her mother is trying to insist to her that she start at this other job, that she get out of where she is, because what she's doing is temp work and not worth anything, and that she has an opportunity for her that is a real legitimate job, and she should do that instead. And they reach a point at an intersection where she can go and see Mr. Chowdhury so that she can get introduced and get this job. But if she does that, she has to turn right. And if she turns left, she's continuing on with what she has been doing at this job, where she is determined to go from being a temp to full-time. And in real life, in the original sequence of events, she takes the left-hand turn. But this woman talking to her begins insisting that she take the right-hand turn instead. And Donna seems to be affected by this connection, like she's being influenced beyond her. What's the word? It's not a choice of consent. It's a choice that's being forced on her somehow.
Well, later when we learn about what this thing is on her back, that it's like a time something. I forget what they call it.
Indeed.
I forget. I can't remember.
You could literally say that sentence about this entire show. Well, when we find out about it, it's a time something. Correct.
It's a time beetle. That doesn't... I feel like...
That feels...
That just seems too simple, because that's what I was going to say, but I was like, no, I mean, it's a beetle, and it, like, feeds on time. So, while the fortune teller is trying to influence her to turn right, that thing is already attaching to her. Mm-hmm. And so, it's like it's creating this parallel universe, and all she has to do to complete that creation is decide, fine, I'll turn right. Mm-hmm. Okay, what if I turned right? Like, just entertain the thought.
Now, can we all get on the same page right out of the gate here and agree that Donna's mother causes the end of the universe? That she is the ultimate villain out of this entire series so far?
And
is this
that she...
awful, toxic mother who is just the worst?
She's terrible. Like, when we first meet Jackie, she's a lot. Mm-hmm. And... you know, she does nag Rose a bit about, like, oh, come on, sweetheart. Just get up. It's just a job. Not a big deal. Just stop feeling sorry for yourself. But it's not the same thing. Like, Donna's mom is actively like, oh, you just want that job because you think you're going to find a man. It's like, well, so?
Right? There's nothing wrong with wanting a relationship with another human being.
Yeah.
Just because you didn't make it work, lady.
And then... there's allusions to, like, after the whole attack on Christmas that her father died. And we haven't talked about her father. Her father was a character in The Runaway Bride. He's not, like, super featured, unlike her mom. Mm-hmm. But the actor who played her father actually died in real life. So when they brought in the grandfather character... that was because it was supposed to... the original plan was it was going to be Donna's dad. But,
interesting, okay.
But the actor died. So they bring in this grandfather character. So they also mention in here that her father died. So it's not like her mom is like some miserable woman who like got divorced when Donna was a little kid and has just been bitter about that forever. Her husband just recently died. But even after all the things start going bad... and then she falls into this depression of, like, staring off into space, not responding to anything Donna says. She's super mean to Donna.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And it's like, but you harassed her. Mm-hmm. You're telling her that being a temp isn't good enough, and you just want to work in this fancy place because you think you're better than other people. And instead you can work in this small company for this guy who develops pictures and be his personal assistant.
Unclear. I had no idea what that job was supposed to be. Yeah. All right. So we're going to get there. She finally turns right. She caves under the pressure of this person telling her that's what she should do.
Belittling her.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that Donna doesn't believe.
She caves to her mother belittling her, but she also caves to the woman in the spooky shop.
It's just like when we see these little bits of the way her mom treats her, we can kind of understand how, you know, this woman does not believe anybody when they tell her she's special.
Yeah.
Or when the doctor's like, no, you're great. I love having you around. Like, she just has, her self-worth is so small and she's so rad that it's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty awful because, like, it's so easy if you haven't grown up in this sort of environment. Like, I did not grow up anywhere like this, where I was being talked to this way. It's easy for me to see this sort of thing and be like, oh my God, that's just so cartoonishly terrible. Nobody is like that. But, like, they very much are.
Oh, yes.
There are a lot of people out there who talk to their children like this, and it will never cease to amaze me that they don't see the damage that they are causing.
Well, like, you watched British Bake Off this recent season. The first time that Steph won Star Baker and she calls her mom, her mom said something to her on the phone where I looked at Jason and I was like, oh my God, her mom's terrible. It was just something like, just sort of not belittling her, but like downplaying how great it was that she actually won. Like, really, you? That kind of reaction. And maybe maybe I took it the wrong way because I'm sensitive to that stuff, because I did have a step-parent who was very belittling towards me. Because it seems like later her mom was very supportive. Like, no, Steph can do, she's had a rough year, but she's so talented. She can do anything she puts her mind to. She just needs the confidence. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if maybe I took what she said more harshly than it was meant. Go back and watch it, though. Whenever the first time Steph wins Starbaker.
Yeah, I don't know that we have reached that yet. I don't remember. But Kirsta doesn't watch this or listen to this show, does she?
No.
Okay. But yeah, I will pay attention to that, because it would be pretty ironic if her mother reacted that way and then later on goes on to talk about how little confidence Steph has. Like, hi, where do you think that fucking comes from, lady?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awful. There's a lot of people out there that, it's like they can, I have seen people act like, well, my parents have been belittling like here and there, but it's not a consistent thing. And it doesn't need for them. They don't have to constantly be like, God, you are such a disappointment.
Yeah.
But if they say something at the wrong time, in the wrong way, and they just aren't aware or paying attention to the like context of it all, that can just like leave a mark that goes on for a long time. And I just think about, there were, now I know that I would have been fine. But when I was like little, there was, we took music classes as, part of the regular curriculum when I was like in 4th grade.
Same.
And I had to sing with the choir, and I was a pretty good singer. And I started to build this confidence. And there was a point where we had to audition for the talent show. And I decided to try and do some singing for the talent show. And I auditioned and I got in, and I told my mom, and I was feeling really glad and proud and excited about it. And I told her what song I was choosing, which is a song that I don't think she realized I had sung many, many times. And her response was, "Ooh, that's a really difficult song. Are you sure you want to sing that in front of everybody? That might not go well." And I dropped out of the talent show.
No!
I completely lost my nerve. And I look back, and I wound up being in musical theater for a while. I would have been killer, even as a fucking 4th grader. But I let somebody else tell me to be worried and afraid. And I remember my music teacher, when I told him that I wasn't going to do it, he got really upset and tried to like sit me down and talk to me about it. And I didn't want to talk about it. I was just sure that my mom knew better than I did. Because that's the thing. When you are a child, you hear your parents and you assume that they know things. And it wound up being okay. I wound up outgrowing listening to my parents about everything and being like, yeah, you don't know. I'm fucking doing this. It's fine. But not everybody has the like defiance that I have. Mm-hmm. And that's not a character flaw on their part. We can't all be this way or the world would not function. So there are going to be people who have all this potential that never gets realized because nobody was there to have their back. And, like if I hadn't met Owen, this would not be happening right now. This show would not be happening. If I didn't have listeners who chimed in to be like, wait, I listened to Unspoiled because of you, not because of Brendan.
Yeah.
I would not have kept podcasting. This would be over and done with, and you would never have heard from me again. I did not believe that anybody was here for me, and I did not believe that I would be able to keep this up by myself, and that I was interesting enough to like maintain a show on my own.
You did not have the confidence of a mediocre white man.
I did not. And, it's one of those things that like, I have some confidence now at this point that makes me look back at that time and be like, wow, I can't believe that I really was ready to just give up. But I really was. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't have somebody in my corner reassuring me that I could do things. I had somebody in my corner constantly resenting me and implying that I was not doing my fair share and making me feel shitty about everything. And I'm super lucky that I'm with somebody now who has been very encouraging, because there's so much that I would not have done by now if there wasn't a person telling me that, no, I think that's a good idea. Give it a try. See what happens.
Yeah.
That's all you need. You don't even need to be like, I'm sure this is going to be wildly successful and you will be a millionaire by tomorrow. Like, just be like, oh, that sounds interesting. Why don't you see what happens? That's it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Jason supports me in any of my dumb ideas. Whether he like thinks it's going to be a thing or it's time worthy or anything. He's just like, sure, if you want to, fine. I'm sure you'll do great.
And like, what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Well, then you just like do a different thing. But there are a lot of people out there who seem to be like, well, if you make a mistake, that's going to ruin everything for the rest of your life. And like, that's occasionally true, but it's not always true.
It's also, you don't even have to have somebody that's like actively being like, that's a terrible idea. When you're, especially if it's somebody you're close to, either you're like your best friend or your boyfriend or girlfriend, somebody whose opinion you value, and they don't give you anything back. Like when you're like, I was thinking about doing this thing, and they're just like, and give you nothing, that they might as well say, why? Why would anybody want to listen to you? Because the indifference is just as hurtful and harmful when you're like putting yourself out there. Even as simple as Donna wanting to have a job that's just a little bit higher class in a higher classed company, that maybe her mom thinks that, oh, you're putting on airs that you don't have. Who cares? Just be supportive.
It's so amazing that she's like that about putting on airs, but then later on there's a point where she doesn't want them to know that they won the money for this trip, that it's not that they're just rich. Because the grandpa's like saying something. So it's like she's like accusing Donna of putting on airs, but it's clear that she does that. And where do you think Donna learned it from if you think that's what's even going on, even though it's not really what's going on? And like there's a lot of sort of like you said, even if she is here because she thinks that she's going to meet a man, so what? And that's like the thing with Brendan when we were together. I was trying to create a business out of podcasting. And initially, his reaction was very much, nobody's going to pay for that.
I remember.
And even after I proved him wrong with selling Game of Thrones episodes, he still didn't really he felt like that was like a fluke. And then he would also say things like accusing me of wanting to do this because I didn't want to get a real job. And
didn't you have a real job?
That was the thing. Like at the time I had a real job, and not only did I have one, but I had like quote real jobs longer than he had, because I was like forced to live on my own much sooner than he was. And yeah, I don't want to work in retail for the rest of my life. And that's not a fucking character flaw. Just because I don't want to do this forever. You know, some people, they want to work their way up and continue in this line of work. For me, this seems like a literal nightmare.
Right.
No, I don't want it. So why would I not try and do something about it? But there was like an accusation there, as if I was really like trying to skirt responsibilities and maybe even just being outright lazy, that I really internalized and felt was true. And I still feel that way a lot of the time. Even though I'm working 60 hours a week minimum with the podcast, I still like have this idea in my head that it's not worthy work.
Untrue. And stop that.
Thank you, Jamie. I am now cured.
Stop it. I know it's really hard to completely silence those little thoughts that get in there from, frankly, an abusive person. Whether or not he was wholly abusive, like putting that kind of thought into your head is controlling and also abusive in its way.
We abused each other. It's really not great.
Okay.
I think back, yeah.
But
it definitely left its mark, though. Like,
yeah.
Because it was also something that like I internalized from my father, who was a workaholic, and there was a lot of talk as if unless you do this type of work, then you are not really trying your hardest, or you are not,
Right.
And that shit sinks in, guys.
It does.
I really feel for Donna in this, like, a lot.
Yeah, and I don't see her mom, like, going out of her way to... I mean, I don't know what her mom's job is. I'm assuming she has one. But after, London falls and they're refugees and they have to go to Leeds and whatever, and Donna's still, like, looking for work.
Yeah.
Like, looking for a way to...
I don't think her mother has a job, because it's all on her, it seems like.
It's hard to tell. Because it does seem like anytime we see her mother, she's either out with her friends or coming in with some groceries. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to tell whether she has a job or not. I mean, Grandpa doesn't seem to have one, but he might have whatever England's version of Social Security is.
Yeah. So we jump from her making this choice to turn right instead. And she is at a Christmas party with some work friends, it seems like. And there is this blonde woman whom looks to me so much like the, bless you, the lady who played the retired Playboy bunny in, oh my God, that's going to drive me nuts. Fuck, I can't remember her name. But there was some movie about a girl who, like, turns 30 and gets kicked out of the Playboy mansion.
Are you talking about Anna Faris?
Is that her?
Are you talking about the house bunny?
The house bunny. Thank you, God.
Yeah,
this blonde woman looks like the house bunny.
That's Anna Faris.
Is that Anna Faris in this episode?
No.
Well, she looks like her. That's all I'm saying. She could have been a bunny. Good for her. And she is having the weirdest reaction because she can see that there is something on Donna's back and is getting really, really freaked out by it because it's like she can see it, but she can't see it.
Yeah.
So she keeps having, it's almost like the corner of your eye thing.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if y'all have experienced that, but there is nothing quite as unnerving as realizing that you can't see something as well when you look straight at it. I've had that happen. I take walks at night a lot in my neighborhood, and it's not super well lit. And there are a lot of times where I see like a figure out of the corner of my eye, and when I look, it's way harder to tell what it is. And I have to sort of turn away, and then I can see it's a mailbox, it's a tree stump, it's whatever. But that happens all the time, and I really dislike that aspect of my vision. I feel like it's mean and unfair and preys on my like startle reflex, and I don't like it.
I have really, really good peripheral vision, and so I'll see something out of the corner of my eye way faster than like anybody else will notice it, which is good for driving.
Yeah, true.
But it sucks when it's like a spider. And I'm like, I have to like turn my head really fast and like there's something right there, and oh my God, it's a fucking spider. Like I see this shit like sooner than my cats do. It's annoying. I don't want to lose
one
my
of your cats like sitting up and looking at you and being like, "Bitch, you did not need to throw us under the bus like this."
Or I'll see it and I'll turn my head and be like, "There's a bug over there," and Jason will be like, "What?" And like, how did you even notice that? I'm like, I saw it out of the corner of my eye.
Jamie, you are not going to believe this. This is going to be the second time we've been talking about somebody and then they like message me. Krista just messaged me this second. So just saw episode 4 of Great British Bake Off, and Steph's mom telling her to believe in herself choked me up.
Oh. Maybe I interpreted it wrong. Also, stop it, universe. Fucking
I know.
Stop.
Jesus. So weird.
Speaking, I mean, Krista also has some parents who do not encourage her.
Yes.
And she would probably be very affected by Donna's mom's behavior more than either of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's the people who just like don't inspire confidence in their kids because of straight up neglect. It's not even that they say anything terrible. It's just that they don't care and leave them to their own devices. And that's Owen's situation.
Yeah. My parents were supportive, but they never pushed me. I think they just always assumed that I was going to do what I wanted and be good at it. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't get that extra push. And school always came really easily to me. Mm-hmm. So because I didn't have anybody pushing me harder, I just got really lazy with it. Like, I'm gonna get A's and B's. Why try harder? Because nobody pushed me to try harder. And I don't resent them for that, but I do wonder, like, what if you guys had just encouraged me or pushed me a little bit more? Mm-hmm. Would I have, like, taken my SATs and applied to colleges when I was a junior and, like, taken a whole different path? But I was just like, ugh, school, whatever. And they didn't steer me in one direction or another. Mm-hmm. They're just like, whatever you want. You know what's best for you. You know, we're not going to push you to do something you don't want to do. But I look back at, like, I was 16. You should have pushed me to do something.
Yeah. Interesting. And it's funny because my mother in general is, like, very, very supportive and is always somebody who's like, I bet that'll be great now. And it's weird to think about her being so doubtful and that being such a formative moment for me. It's almost like there was something that happened that was so out of character simply because the script needed me to learn to question authority really early on in my life. You know, like, because she really isn't that way in general. But it did lead to me, like, later on. I went to a boarding school for my senior year, despite my parents both being like, oh, no, you are not going anywhere for your senior year. You are finishing school where you started. And I was like, well, I applied already. I got a full scholarship. You still don't want me to go? And then they were like, fine, go. So, yeah. But then that defiance streak is also, like, backfired a few times. So, you know, whatever. So, yeah, this scene where this girl can see it is really, I love her trying to be cool and trying to act like she's not seeing anything and, like, being like, oh, I'm just being crazy, whatever, it's fine. And she's, like, spending all this money talking about how she is, like, has this promotion that she got the personal assistant job, and she's, like, talking about this, and that seems to be the moment when this girl really notices it. And I can't help but wonder if, like, the discussion about these moments in her life are what makes it sort of visible to her in particular.
Well, these are like these moments are also happening in conjunction with, like, a time where Donna was supposed to be somewhere else.
Right, true.
So these are moments where that, like, parallel world is forming itself.
Interesting. Okay, I like that idea. So they're in the middle of, like, just hanging out and drinking when this guy comes in and is like, hey, there's a Christmas star floating above the city. And we know that this was the Spider People's weird fucking ship. Mm-hmm. I'll be honest with you guys. I 100% thought that this was the Spider People coming back to get at her again and change things. And that was what was on her back, was a giant spider. Huh. I thought it was them trying to change things so that they could succeed in their plan.
That would have been interesting.
And it was really weird when, like, you know, the ship gets shredded anyway by, like, the military shooting at it. Mm-hmm. Then I was like, well, that can't be it, because it doesn't look like they succeeded, even though she wasn't there. So I don't really get.
But the doctor died, and she was supposed to be there.
Right.
And that's what changes everything, really.
Yeah. So it's just like I was on the wrong track as to what mattered here, because I was so fixated on this, like, weird bug thing being significant in and of itself, when that was really not the thing. And yeah, she sees them, like, taking this body away, and then we hear somebody talking about how they found the body. It was the doctor. And by the way, it's Rollo again.
Yup.
What's up, Rollo? Sweetie.
I couldn't just have him in one episode, or 2 episodes, I guess.
There is a woman on staff responsible for that. Or a man who is attracted to men.
We just...
Somebody.
we need a soldier. Why don't we get one of the soldiers from a previous? How about that one? That man was very tall and handsome, very authoritative. Let's bring him back.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I don't know if we're going to see him again in another thing, if there's going to be another parallel universe like moment where he shows up again, but it's kind of fun to like have that kind of callback. And it'd be really easy to miss. I only noticed because it's Rollo and he's fine as hell.
Yeah.
You know, if it was somebody else, I probably would never have registered.
I didn't notice it any of the other times I've watched these, but because we talked about him so much, as soon as he popped up, I was like, oh, you're back.
Mm-hmm.
Made me want to look up some of those pictures I was looking at while we were talking about him.
Listen, watch Vikings. I'm just saying.
I mean, I did. I just have to get back into it.
That's right. God, that show. I get so distracted every time I start talking about it. I need to not talk about it because... So this is when Rose comes running up. And like every other time that we've seen Rose, she has been there for a moment and then gone again. Mm-hmm. And this is the first time that she is like around. So she walks up and Donna says something about how they found a body, the doctor, somebody they said was a doctor. And she's like, but I came so far. And Donna's like, I'm really sorry. Did you know him? I mean, they didn't say a name. It could be any doctor. And Rose looks at her like, you know, suddenly realizing maybe there's some significance here and says, what is your name again? And then says, I'm not even supposed to be here. This is just wrong. And she's staring at Donna's shoulder. Mm-hmm. And Donna, again, is like, why do you keep looking at my back? You are doing it right now. Somebody else was doing it. And she turns back around, and then Rose is gone. Mm-hmm. And she is shooketh.
Well, who wouldn't be?
Yeah, it's a real freaky moment. And then we jump to her being fired. Mm-hmm. This scene, I don't really know what to make of what they wanted us to take from this scene. First of all, she says that she's like going to appeal it, and that the first thing she's going to say is wandering hands. Which, is this insinuating that she would lie about sexual harassment and assault just to fuck with this guy?
I didn't take it that way. I took it that he probably had a little bit of wandering hands and she just let it go because she wanted to be, you know, this is a stable job. And as we women have had to deal with in many jobs, we don't want to lose our job just because this guy can't stop touching our shoulders or something.
Yeah.
That's how I took it. That might be influenced by the last several years of lots of these things really coming forward in the news and all of us sort of taking a reckoning with like, yeah, that's fucking happened to me too.
Right.
Hashtag me too.
Yeah.
Or it just could be like, that's just how, I don't know. That's what I thought the intention was. And I don't remember ever thinking differently before.
Yeah, there was like a moment of me just being like, are they trying to be like, she's just like, if you try and fire me right now, I am definitely going to accuse you of this. And I was like, that is fucked up. But it was more about her delivery of it that felt sort of like it felt not like some like indignant so much as like just outright aggressive. Well, in a way that felt like a threat more than just a blackmail-y, I guess. Sometimes
I think that Catherine Tate goes to the shouting part of her acting talents instead of, like, she'll yell something instead of performing the line in a different way. And, like, she does perform aggressively in a lot of scenes.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that's just her particular way. It was one of the things about her that I didn't initially... It made me not like her as much because I felt like on my first watch of this season, that Donna just spent a lot of time yelling.
Yeah, I can see that.
And she does, but I've seen her in other things now, and I realize that it's a choice that Catherine Tate made, but it also goes with some of her established persona as an actor. She doesn't do it quite as much on The Office, but a little bit.
I love this moment where she realizes that somebody had to type this up for him. And she's like, did you get somebody to type this? And then she's like, Beatrice. And this woman turns around. I was like really waiting for Beatrice to like factor into the rest of the story at some point. No such luck.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted Beatrice to turn up over and over again and be like this constant thorn in Donna's side. And then we'd find out that Beatrice was some sort of like construct from the strange fortune teller lady, that she wasn't even real, you know?
Yeah. This scene also like factors into that. Remember in Donna's first episode where the doctor's talking about different things that happened and Donna never noticed because like I was in Spain or whatever. Mm-hmm. So the hospital gets, the rain's going up, the hospital goes to the moon. Everybody's watching this on the news, just like she's throwing a fit because she's being fired, but they're also not paying attention to her fit because there's this thing happening in their city. And she's like, and then the rumble happens and the hospital comes back and she's like, oh, the hospital's back. Like, it's not a weird thing that was happening. She's just
so funny.
So like self-absorbed in that moment. Like, I am indignant that you would have the gall to fire me and you're paying attention to some stupid thing on TV.
Yeah. Yeah, which winds up like, they're like, oh, yeah, the hospital's back and there is one survivor. This one dude.
Yeah.
Who survived because somebody named Martha Jones gave him her air.
Yeah, the last of her oxygen.
Yeah.
And we find out that Sarah Jane Smith, who had been a reporter and who was, for whatever reason, like, took control of the situation, like, she's the reason they were able to come back, but she died and her son died and his friends died. Mm-hmm. So, like, here's people connected to the doctor who have all died now.
Right.
In a situation that if he had been there, he was the one who would have figured out what was going on with the MRI machine and had the capability to take the radiation on himself because he has two hearts and can regenerate or slightly regenerate.
Right.
But Sarah Jane can't do that. So, like, now there's, like, bigger casualties, which mean nothing to Donna because she doesn't know Sarah Jane, but we do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, she's looking through, her mother's looking through the box of stuff that she took when she got sacked. And there's a raffle ticket in there.
There's also a stapler with B's name on it.
Oh, that's right. And there's a hole punch.
Well, at least you got the hole punch. But you know what?
Mother.
That's also something I probably would have taken, so.
Listen, office supplies are every man for himself, as far as I am concerned, in that kind of environment.
And that one was cute. It was blue. I totally would have taken it, too.
And it turns out, we find out later, that this raffle ticket was a winner, and that she needs to use that money to get out of London for next Christmas. And it's a weird thing because of the way that Rose knows about it when she talks to her later. I can't tell if that was a planted raffle ticket.
No.
Or if it just happened to be a winner and Rose was explaining to her what she ought to do with the money.
I believe that Rose comes into these situations with a little bit of knowledge of what has happened, or I'm not sure. But she says, you had a raffle ticket. It's a first prize winner. You should go away for Christmas. Mm-hmm. Like, because she knows that something is coming, which she kind of would, because she has some sort of understanding that what's happening here is all stuff that happened but was saved. Mm-hmm. And so she knows what's next. And she also knows she needs to protect Donna without coming straight out and being like, so, for whatever reason, you don't seem to remember the doctor, but you were with him when this happened, and now everything's wrong. So she's just like, let me keep her alive until we can figure out how to build a time machine to send Donna where she's supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This moment is also the first, not the first, but like one of the more gut-punchy interactions between her and her mom, because she tells her, I can't believe how well you're handling this, that I got fired. I thought you'd hit the roof. And her mother says, I'm just tired, Donna, what with your father and everything. To be honest, I've given up on you.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, that's what the moment later where Donna says, I guess I've always been a disappointment, and her mom says, yeah.
And that's like the only time that she replies. Donna's been talking for a minute.
Yeah.
And she doesn't feel like answering a question or responding in any way, except to confirm that indeed you are a disappointment and a failure, and I am embarrassed of you and wish I had never had you, is the entire vibe of that.
It's pretty terrible.
Yeah, it's horrifying. So yeah, the whole, like, this leads to her finally going and taking a walk. And she runs into Rose here, who is trying to play it off like, oh yeah, hey, how are you doing? And she's like, no, we're not going to just act like everything is cool. You saw something on my back. You're doing it again. Also, last time we talked, you just straight up disappeared. And Rose is trying so very hard to be normal, and it is not working. Bless her. And at one point, Donna says, like, sometimes other people are also looking at her. And Rose asks, what sort of people? Which is interesting, because it seems like any sort of people. I can't see a pattern with exactly the type of person who can see it and who can't.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it comes and goes. Like that one girl was like, there's something I can't see. Later on, there's the soldier who draws his weapon on her and sees it obviously very clearly for a moment, but then it's gone.
Yeah.
So at first I kind of thought that like anybody who could see it was somebody who was going to wind up having like a big role to play in things later. And now I'm thinking that maybe it's just sort of an at-random thing. I don't know.
Maybe it's like, we talked about how like some people can sort of sense, this is stupid, but how people can sort of sense like ghost activity. Mm-hmm. Like some people are sensitive to things in a different way. Mm-hmm. I almost feel like the randomness of who can see glimpses of this thing are people who just have, for whatever reason, are sensitive to the sort of temporal shift that is involved with this thing being on her. And so their guard is down or something, and they can glimpse it, but they don't know what they're seeing.
Maybe. All right. Well, yeah, at this point, Rose says maybe you should take a trip to out of London for Christmas, get out, you and your family, just leave the city, because you're definitely going to have money from this winning ticket. And this is when Donna really starts to get waked out and tells Rose, I really think that you should not tell me what to do or tell me your name at least, because you just won't even do that.
Yeah.
And, leave me alone. And I liked her acting in this moment because she's angry and scared, and she really gets that all across. So then we jump to them at Christmas, going to this like bed and breakfast. It's gorgeous. And they are hanging out here having a lovely Christmas away when they see the news. I think they first hear a crash, right?
Well, no, they wake up on Christmas morning and her mom like refuses to get out of bed because she's going to enjoy all of this luxury. Unlike you, madam, who were up at dawn.
Except she's so lazy, but okay, yeah.
And on the TV, there's this thing about the Titanic crashing, heading towards Buckingham Palace. And they're like, how is that possible, the Titanic? And Donna, like, thinks it must be some kind of hoax. And, I mean, who would not think that, really? And Wilf is like, it's aliens. And everyone's just like, doubtful, but it is a giant ship that is heading towards Buckingham Palace. And then they hear the crash. And the crash is so big that it, like, rocks the building they're in, you know, 100. I don't know how far away from London they are because they can see the mushroom cloud.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird, like, this mushroom cloud moment. I mean, it makes sense because I think we find out that there was, like, all this radiation, right? That they were using as power for this ship, and that's what winds up affecting everything long term there and makes it uninhabitable, essentially. But it is... At first, I thought that it was just sort of like a 9/11 moment, you know?
Yeah.
Just like this sudden loss of life in a city that is just going to be like a national tragedy that we'll all remember. And it turns out to have a lot like more widespread consequences.
Yeah, it says London was destroyed and all of southern England has been flooded with radiation.
Right.
And France has closed its borders.
So then comes in this maid. She is played by what's her face from Dexter. She was in something else. I can't remember.
She was in Dexter?
Yeah, wasn't she a cop in Dexter?
I don't think so.
Maybe I'm thinking of another thing. She was a cop in something. But she is able to see whatever is on Donna's back, and she can see it really clearly. She sees it and continues yelling at Donna about it in Spanish, even though everybody else, it's like they can only see it for an instant or kind of see it, and then it's gone. It seems like a sustained thing with this lady. And for a moment, Donna can see it as well. And seems to be able to like look over her shoulder at it. There's like a flash of it in the mirror. But the next moment she like looks up at the maid and then looks back at the mirror again and it is gone. And this is when we see this ship coming in. So I guess you're right that it's like the moments when it's most visible are around when something like enormous is happening. And when she goes outside at one point and they're like looking at the cloud and realizing that London is gone, she turns around and the maid is standing there pointing at her, and it is the most hilarious monkey on Family Guy moment. They did not need to do that. If they had just left that out, this whole thing would have been so much more like effective. But that one ridiculous, it really undermined this for me. And I was just like, who chose? Who made this decision?
This woman literally has 5 credits to her filmography.
What are they? Filmography, or is the TV included in that?
It's everything. She's got 5 credits as an actress.
Okay. What was she in?
Something called Pinero.
Don't know that one.
Law and Order. An episode of Law and Order.
That, but that makes sense.
An episode of Casualty, which is a British soap. This episode of Doctor Who. And then 1 episode of Elementary.
Huh. I wonder who I'm thinking of then. God, I have somebody so clearly in mind that I'm like, now I'm going to look up Dexter and see if she just looks a lot like an actress that was on that.
The only actress, like the only female cop I can think of that wasn't his sister is the black woman.
Yeah. Well, this woman's black.
She's Spanish.
Maid. You can be both.
No, I think she's like Hispanic Spanish. She's also from Brooklyn. She's born in Brooklyn.
There is no need for that tone, ma'am.
I just was surprised. I wasn't expecting to see that she was born in Brooklyn.
Yeah, Luna Lauren Velez. That's who she looks like to me. She looks just like her to me. That's funny. I guess she's not, though, because I'm looking through her. Oh, nope. It says that she was also in Elementary. I'm going back in time here.
She might be
Law and Order.
Hispanic. I always thought she was black.
But you can be both.
I know.
I'm saying.
I know what you're saying. I just didn't think that she was... I thought she was not Hispanic at all. Is what I'm saying.
In Dexter, doesn't she speak Spanish several times?
She lives in Miami.
So?
I don't know. It's been a long time since I watched Dexter.
And I think in Dexter, she has a Spanish last name as well, if
Does
I'm not
she?
mistaken. Yeah. Lieutenant Maria Laguerta.
Oh, LaGuerta. Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was thinking then. Maybe I'm thinking about the other cop, the black cop. What was his name? God, he was funny. Surprise, motherfucker! That guy.
Hard ass motherfucker. I'm looking her up for Doctor Who and seeing if anybody else made the same mistake I did.
There's no pictures of her on IMDb, by the way, of the maid actress.
It says on Wikipedia, turn left of the cult British TV series Doctor Who.
What?
So, on her Wikipedia...
Whose?
Lorraine Velez. I think that she goes by 2 different names.
What?
She's like Luna Lauren Velez on her IMDb, but then there's like Lorraine Velez, which might be like her Spanish original name. Her name has sometimes appeared as Lorraine Velez. She's the twin sister of actress Lauren Velez. Boom! There it is. Oh, mystery solved. I was going fucking nuts. Jesus God.
God, thank God we solved that mystery.
Because I was just like, she looks just like her. What? Okay, that's what it is. Jesus. It makes total sense that she didn't get as much work as her sister when she was forced to point the way that she is in this episode. Nobody's hiring you after this. Sorry. God.
Ooh, that was a roller coaster.
Riveting radio. So yeah, this is the first moment where, like, I was just like, oh, if you had just not done that, this actually would have been really fucked up. And then we go to the moment when they are being sent, they are being rehomed somewhere. And she does not want to go to Leeds. And the woman who is working with her on her case is just basically like, guess what? Leeds is it. You don't get to pick and choose where you go. In all of southern England needs to be moved somewhere else. France has closed its borders. It's Leeds or nothing. And we find out that, like, it's a pretty serious situation in that they don't get to, like, it's not like there's housing set up. It's like they have taken over the housing that was there already for government purposes and just split it off into parts. Mm-hmm. So it is basically a ghetto.
Yep.
And the dude that they meet who introduces them to their new home is this just precious, adorable, sweet little...
Italian.
She calls him Mussolini at one point.
Donna. He's just this jolly making the best of every situation Italian man.
Yep. Yeah, is really trying to put a good face on the fact that there are literally 8 people living in like one room, except for his grandmother who gets a room to herself because she's old. Mm-hmm. And they had not been aware that they have to share space, which to me seems like a real oversight. That feels like something you want to inform families of before you relocate them.
Yeah.
That, by the way, you won't be alone in this house. But they weren't. They're not.
He really does make the best of every situation, though, where he's like, you know, she's like, it's the kitchen. And he's like, you're close to the refrigerator when it's warm, and you've got the stove when it's cold.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, he'd be a very good salesman. So this is just way more dire than anybody had been prepared for. And there's a pretty like moving moment where she's talking with her mother about all of the people that they knew on their street who are gone. And like Donna is sort of trying to be like, when they mention a specific lady, like, well, maybe she went away for Christmas too. And she tells her mother, I'm going to go to town tomorrow. There has to be work. Everyone needs secretaries, to which I'm like, no, they don't. As soon as I'm earning, we'll get a proper place. Just you wait, Mom. And she says, what if it never gets better? Even the bees are disappearing. Mm-hmm. You don't see bumblebees anymore. And Donna says, the emergency government will sort us out. They'll do something. And just, my God. Y'all, we just really think that there are systems in place to help us. It would be precious if it weren't so fucking depressing. But guess what? And then she says the very last line is, well, then we'll complain. We haven't even got a vote. We're just no one, Donna. Who's going to listen to us? We're no one. We don't exist. Which feels very prescient right now. Mm-hmm. Anybody who follows me on Facebook has seen the article that I posted today about the stealing of children and the long-term effects and trauma that that is having. And it is really horrifying. And these are people suffering through this who have no say in anything. Mm-hmm. And have no, like, you know, they have no recourse is what it comes down to, unless somebody volunteers to represent them, which people are doing. But you can't do it with everybody because there's just not sheer enough hours in the day.
There's also not enough lawyers to do it.
So, yeah, this just felt really, like, on the nose for right now. Mm-hmm. So they go, there's, like, singing, and she gets up and is about to yell at them when she sort of gets roped into the singing. And...
because her grandpa's in there.
Yeah.
So Wilf.
They're like in the middle of trying to have a good time when they hear all of these gunshots, and they go outside and there's like soldiers shooting at all of these cars because there is some sort of atmos thing going on in these cars that we can't shut off, and all this gas is being released and yada, yada, yada. And this is the moment where that soldier sees the thing on her back and begins to flip the fuck out.
You didn't mention that before that they see on TV that the U.S. had pledged to help Britain with monetary relief, but they had to abandon their plan because 60 million Americans turned into fat.
That's right. I forgot about that.
So there's 60 million little, maybe more than 60 million little adipose running around the U.S.
Just like, what a fucking nightmare. Oh my God. So at this point, there's a flash of light. And by now, Donna knows what this means. And she goes around the corner with this look on her face like, what do you have for me now, bitch? And indeed, there is Rose standing there waiting for her. And she tries her best to explain what is going on. And she says something like, this man that you overheard had been killed, the doctor, is somebody that you know. And I'm sure, actually, that you dream about him sometimes. And you might actually even kind of low-key have memories of some of the things that you went through in this other version of events. And Donna, sure enough, has like this flash of the Spider Woman, for lack of a better way of saying that, and understandably gets pretty freaked out by this. And is also so certain that she does not matter in general, that she's finding it very hard to accept that this is anything, that it's not just somebody blowing smoke up her ass. And Rose is like, yeah, none of this was meant to happen. You were supposed to meet him and team up with him, and you were going to save his life, and he in turn was going to save all of these other lives by doing all of these other things. And we are going to have to, she says, tall, thin man, great hair. Some really great hair.
It's a fact.
Which I thought was pretty amusing. I enjoyed that. But yeah, Donna's just like, she does not have that moment that so many people, I think, would really have. And that's part of what makes these folks heroes, is that they react like this, where they're like, no, there must be some mistake, instead of being like, oh, I'm important. Oh, I knew I was. Thank God you're here to tell me this thing that I already knew. Which honestly is, I think, something that most of us would feel if we were, because we are all like the main characters in our own dramas. Mm-hmm. And I always feel like the majority of human beings, when told that they in particular are important, would definitely buy it right off the bat.
Are you watching the current season of The Good Place?
I am not.
Okay, never mind. Are you planning on it?
Yes.
Okay, then never mind.
So, yeah, at this point, we have the gas burned off, like that they get to watch happen. And it turns out that those are the folks from Torchwood, and that Jack was working with them still. Mm-hmm. So, like, Jack is still out here making moves, even though the doctor is not around, which is lovely.
Yeah, and this is his team is up there. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Rose finally tells her, I've been pulled across from another universe because every single universe is in danger. The darkness is coming from across the stars, and we can't stop it. And Donna, what do you keep telling me for? What am I supposed to do? And she's like in tears, and I'm like, yeah, honestly, Rose, you got to give her an action plan here. Because all you're saying is basically like, well, the world's not supposed to be this fucked. And she's like, yeah, I kind of know that's true. Like, you don't need to be from the future to be like, yeah, this is fucked up, huh? I don't like this. It shouldn't be happening. You're right. It shouldn't. Give me something here. But finally, Rose says, I need you to come with me. And of course, Donna's just like, no, I don't think so. Doesn't trust her. I mean, why would you? And Rose says, you only have to come when you want to, but it won't be long. Couple weeks. Does your grandfather still own that telescope? And Rose stops and turns around and gives her a look, and she just says, 3 weeks' time. But you've got to be certain. Because when you come with me, Donna, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But you're going to die. And Donna is just like, what the fuck? And then Rose disappears right in front of her for the first time. Mm-hmm. Every other time, she's like turned her back. And it's been like, oh, that's mysterious. But maybe I just didn't see her walk away. But this is the first time that it's a real legit like ghost moment. And then we go to the scene that I regret the most in terms of choices made here, because this could have been done in a way that was a lot more affecting. And I feel like they missed the mark here. And this is when Rocco and his family are being loaded up on a truck to go to a labor camp, because they are changing up the requirements for this sort of housing England for the English, as they say, and making America great again.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, Donna does not understand what is actually happening here, which really, to me, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
The character that we know is not a fucking moron. She is somebody with a lot of potential that was never realized, but you don't hear the term labor camps and not immediately think of death camps and concentration camps, like, especially if you're English, especially if your grandfather was alive during that era and has doubtless talked about it, especially if you have television and this stuff is being reported on and is being called, like, you would have had time to, like, figure this out and have conversations about it before they're being led out the door. And the fact that she doesn't get it irks me no end. And then as her grandfather is saying that's what they called them last time, the music, like, swells to this really sort of, it's just so melodramatic, and you don't need it. This is such a fucked up moment anyway. Mm-hmm. They could have just let it stand on its own. And they could have had Donna completely aware of what is going on. They don't need to have her suddenly realize in this, like, completely out of character naivety that I don't buy. And, you know, I really loved how they played it with Rocco trying to put a good face on it for fucking as long as he can, being as bubbly as he is, but it drops when he makes eye contact with her grandfather. Like, they both fucking know, and he can't quite maintain this, like, cheery disposition when he's looking in the eyes of this man who is openly weeping as he's being taken away. I thought this was, like, so good, and the way that they chose to do it just really undercut everything about it that was so affecting. The acting was what made it so good. The believability of things taking this turn was what made it so good. And to have Donna, like, this bumbling idiot who has no idea what's going on until it's basically told to her, and the music being like this, it's like an SNL sketch.
I think it's unfortunately one of those times where the show, I can't say it doesn't trust its audience, because it's not that. It's that they put too much stock in, we have to make sure that young viewers understand what we mean here. So we need to play it with, we need somebody to be their proxy and to have the situation explained to them. And we need this music to convey how sad and serious this situation is, how dire it is. It's unfortunate because it's a show that adults enjoy, but it's a show that kids also watch and would have questions about.
Okay.
But
I guess
it's a bad choice to make Donna stand there completely oblivious to the...
Yeah.
Like, I can believe Donna being oblivious to alien activity happening around her because she's just absorbed in her own day-to-day. She's just not the kind of person that was paying that much attention to what was going on around her. In the case of, like, well, I was in Spain, like we said, or I was, I was hungover. Like, there were reasons why she didn't notice. But to say, here's this family being carted away with the words, England is now only for the English, in these army trucks, and for her to be like, what does that mean? It doesn't make sense for the character. You could have had a child standing next to them on the street going, why are you so upset? And have Wilf say to him, years ago there was a war and people were rounded up and put into camps. Mm-hmm. And this is like that again. Mm-hmm. Or not have Donna be so idiotic about it and just have her grandfather look at her and say, it's happening again. Mm-hmm. This is what it was like last time. Mm-hmm. But they completely dumbed it down, and by dumbing it down, they dumbed down a character who's not dumb. Mm-hmm. And so it's insulting.
Yeah, and it's like they practiced such restraint in the previous episode with Midnight and the way that they played with sound and didn't like use almost any music and just kind of let it stand. And they just needed to practice that same restraint again here.
Yeah.
That's really, like, aside from plot holes and everything that happen on this show, my main complaint has been the music and the way that it's been used. I feel like there have been a lot of
you've complained about it.
Instances where it could be, if they had just chosen different music, the moment would not have seemed as ridiculous as it did. So, and there are times for overly dramatic music. There, like, that can work. Mm-hmm. But it just, you have to be so careful with it. And, yeah. So this is the moment where she goes inside and her mother is just staring into space. And she says something about how, I suppose I've always been a disappointment. And her mother just says, yeah. And she doesn't, like, blink almost that entire scene, I don't think. It's real creepy, honestly. So,
yeah, I guess they're trying to convey, like, how the toll that all of this is having on everybody, and the toll it's having on her mother is that her mother just isn't even bothering to do anything or say anything anymore. She just sits there in her depression, which I'm not going to say there's nothing to be depressed about.
Right.
But she also doesn't have to be awful.
Yeah, you can be dealing with your own issues without being cruel to other people.
Yeah.
Being fucked up is not an excuse to be fucked up to other people.
Yeah.
So we cut to her outside with her grandfather, and they are looking through the telescope, and all of a sudden he's like, is something wrong with this? Orion was just right there. Why? Look through this. Do you see that this is... And then as he's looking, a bunch of the stars begin to go out. A lot of them at once. Mm-hmm. And she realizes that exactly what she was told is happening right now. He is just so freaked out. Like, of course you would be, And she stands up and turns around, and there is Rose... And she says, I'm ready. And Rose leads her through this, like, I'm going back to, like, find the exact spot. Because when she turns around and says, I'm ready, it's like it just cuts, if I'm not mistaken, from Rose, like, nodding to her then being on a truck.
Yeah.
And it's unclear to me, because Rose is, like, evaporating and whatnot after they talk. So is this location that she is led to in her universe or on another plane?
No.
Or what?
No, it's just... We don't have an explanation of how Rose is pushing through. Mm-hmm. But she's obviously been working with UNIT. And this is a UNIT base.
So this is in Donna's own world?
Yes.
Okay.
And they understand, because they understand that there are other worlds and other planets and other creatures out there. Mm-hmm. And then especially with Rose being able to get there from an alternate universe somehow. Mm-hmm. And she obviously is a person of authority on her own universe.
Right.
So, because they like call her ma'am and everything when she comes in.
She apparently has not told them her name either.
Right. But she, like the doctor, walks in and says, this is what's happening and this is what we need to do. And they follow orders because she's got more information than they do.
Mm-hmm. So, this is the first time that Donna gets to see the TARDIS, and it's just precious.
Jason,
I love this
the
so
only
much.
thing he reacted to in the whole episode, because most of the time he was playing on his phone, but when her, like, reaction inside where you just hear her voice sort of echo with, wow.
No
No way. That's what she said. He just, like, chuckled while he was playing his game.
Yeah, I really enjoy, too, looking inside once we finally do get a look. It being so dark in there, nothing is working.
Yeah.
Is very disorienting and just makes you go, oh my God, what happened? You know, like, we're so used to it looking one way.
And Rose
this is
says,
very
like,
affecting.
this used to light up, and I think it's dying.
And yeah, Donna says, if he was so special, what was he doing with me? And she says, he thought you were brilliant. And Donna says, don't be stupid. And she says, you are. It just took the doctor showing you that, simply being with him. And this is when Rose is looking at her in a way, and Donna is like, are you looking at my, what is it there? And Rose says, do you want to see it? And immediately Donna's like, no. And then she sort of reconsiders and is like, okay, yeah, I am sort of curious. And they put her in the center of this circle of like lights
And mirrors.
and mirrors. And they start the whole thing up and she can see it and she really begins to completely freak out. And I mean, you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, who wouldn't?
I mean, and it's awful because like they turn the lights out and she's able to like go back to not seeing it, but now she knows it's there. And like, how do you live knowing that? Even if you can't touch it or feel it, like, you know, it's awful. Yeah, and it's like messing with her hair as well. It's like gotten up near her ponytail and stuff, like the pincers of it. Oh, I hate it. So she asks what it is, and Rose says, we don't know. It feeds off time. By changing time, by making someone's life take a different turn, like meetings never made. And at this point, Donna has an interesting reaction that I rather liked. She basically accuses Rose of lying and saying that she was special, when in fact it's just this thing on her that makes her special. That it wasn't about her at all. She isn't the thing that they're after. Because she still doesn't understand that the fact that it changed what she did is the important part. She's still not really getting that. So she is resentful of like, basically, I have gained notoriety because I have a terrible disease that you've never seen before. Ooh, goody.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, that doesn't make me special. It's just a fucking creepy weirdo accident of chance that I had no control over that doesn't mean anything. And Rose is like, no. No, I promise you, this is about you. They targeted you with this thing because you are incredibly important somehow.
And she says
It's a really good conversation. I like this a whole lot.
She says that they're getting separate readings from Donna that make it seem like reality is bending around her.
Right. Yep. Eventually, that woman who's in charge in the beret chimes in and tells Rose to, like, shut the fuck up because it's not relevant to the mission, because I guess she's giving a little bit too much away. But yeah, Rose is like, I thought it was just the doctor that we needed, but it turns out it's both of you together. And yeah, her acting in this moment.
Catherine Tate's or Billie Piper's?
No, Catherine Tate's. Her like shaking, crying, and desperation.
Yeah.
Oh, she's fucking killing me with this. And she says, why? What can I do? And Rose can't tell her, apparently. She just sort of shakes her head, but she can't say. And finally, Donna's like, all right, you know what? Turn this thing off. I don't need to see this anymore. I don't want to know that it's there. But yeah, it's awful. I really felt bad for her. She's just like, you know, when the lights turn off, she sort of relaxes a little bit, but then is immediately like, it's still there though, isn't it? So Rose is like, all right, well, we're going to have you travel in time. And here's the deal. There's going to be a turn that you have to take. And it's going to seem so ordinary. You are not going to remember this. If you think back, you are not going to recognize this as deeply important. But promise it is. And we're going to try and get you to as close to where this occurred as we can. And you are going to have to keep yourself from turning right and make yourself turn left instead. And Donna, as they are like firing this up, starts to say to Rose, oh, okay, so what you're saying is my life will change, but I won't die. It's just that I'm going to be on a different path than I am now. It's not like a real death. And Rose doesn't answer her and just gives her a look like, I'm really sorry, buddy. But the machine is already started. There's no time to explain. She wouldn't if she could anyway. And Donna winds up being thrown onto a street a mile away from where this turn takes place.
Half a mile.
Half a mile, okay. So she has to fucking sprint. And is intending to, like, run up to her own car window and tell herself, don't do this. But then realizes that's not going to happen. She will not be able to make it in time. And she sees this truck, I think a garbage truck, if I'm not mistaken.
Something like that. A big truck.
And she suddenly realizes, like, oh my God, I know what it is. I know what I have to do. And we see this, like, cut with her present self that is arguing with her mother still. And she throws herself in front of the truck. And we see present Donna. She tells her mother, well, see, traffic jam there, so I guess that's decided it for us. We're going left. And then all of a sudden, Donna, that's on the ground, who had been hit by the truck, Rose comes up and whispers something to her. And she says, tell him this, 2 words, and whisper something. And then we cut back to Donna in the shop with the fortune teller, jumping up and getting the fucking bug off her back, which is finally dying, and it's got some of her hair lodged in its mouth, I wanted to mention, which I don't care for at all, that visual. I don't like that at all. And the fortune-telling woman says, you were so strong. What are you? What do you become? Or what will you be?
Yeah.
And Donna does not know what to make of that because, as it turns out, she doesn't really remember what happened here. All she remembers is it's like a dream, and it starts fading away. So, like, the doctor walks in and she hugs him with, like, so much enthusiasm because she remembers just enough to know that he was gone in whatever that was going on. And it's like waking up from a dream that your significant other died.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's just like the world.
Or like a dream where something terrible happened to them, whether they died or not. But like something really bad happened, you wake up and you're like, oh my God, wait, you're there. Okay, good.
Yeah. So he explains to her, because he's investigating this little bug. He doesn't exactly cut it open. He's just prodding it with something. I don't know if that's that tool has a name or not.
I don't know.
But he says that it's part of the trickster brigade. Changes lives in tiny ways. Most times the universe just compensates around it. But with you, great big parallel world. And she says, you told me that those were sealed off. And he says, they are, but you had one created around you, which is weird because that feels like it happens a lot with you specifically, like the whole thing with the library as well. And he says, honestly, there's a lot of coincidence with you that doesn't really line up. I met you out of everybody for a second time. Your grandfather I ran into again. It's like we're being forced together somehow. And she says at this point, I'm nothing special. And he says, yes, you are. You're brilliant. And this jogs her memory. And she suddenly remembers the thing that Rose wanted her to tell him. And she says, bad wolf. And all of a sudden, you get this fucking montage of all of these signs that is very similar to what had happened last time Bad Wolf was revealed. Mm-hmm. Now, were these there to be seen around the whole time? Or is it that they were like being camouflaged and now he can see them clearly?
That's how I took it.
Because like I looked back at some moments and everything is in another language.
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah. It's like everything is written in Chinese or an alien version of Chinese. And then suddenly he could actually see it.
Okay.
And it all says Bad Wolf.
And when he goes into the TARDIS, it's red. And he's like, what is it? What is Bad Wolf? And he says, the end of the universe. And previous, when she had started to tell him there was a woman who told me to tell you something, he asks what she looks like. And he, like, all she says is blonde. Mm-hmm. But he's like, what was her name? And she's like, she didn't tell me. Apparently she didn't tell anybody, but he's like figuring it out. And
well, and especially with
like, cuts.
Especially with the words Bad Wolf.
Right, right.
There's only one person it could be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that was a pretty fun reveal. I like that a lot.
Do you have any theory on what this means?
Not really.
Okay.
Like, with the stars going out, my assumption with things like this is always like I'm needing to access power of some kind. And so I'm trying to take that power by harnessing, incredibly powerful things like stars. But I don't know what that power is going to be used for or who is trying to get it or like just in general, who is behind something like that. And who benefits in the end because, it'd have to be some sort of like life form that would not need light and wouldn't need like anything provided by light. Like I would think, or else, I say that, but I'm like, yeah, we're doing shit to kill our own planet right now. And it's not really phasing us. So maybe they do need it and they just don't have great long-term thinking. And that could certainly be what it is also. Bees. Yeah, I don't know. But I thought this was a pretty cool episode. I like this idea a lot. And the concept of something like forcing you to make a different decision.
It's the sliding doors thing.
Traveling. Yeah, and it's like rather than, because the thing that you always think of is somebody going back in time and making you make a different decision in the moment. Mm-hmm. But the idea of like attaching something to you that gets into time on your behalf and makes it like it changed. It's just a very wild idea. And if that had succeeded, if she had not managed to like fight back, what would this have looked like on her end? Would all of this have gone away and shifted and disappeared?
Do you think that this fortune teller is in cahoots with whatever might be coming?
Oh, I assume so. Yeah. That it's like it's trying to keep her from being here with the doctor for whatever is about to happen. that it has a vested interest in her not being involved somehow. So, yeah, I assumed that. I just didn't know, like, what the actual practical aspect of it would look like. It would, if she succeeded in getting Donna to choose this other thing and Donna did not fight back, would Donna just vanish from this room?
That's a good question.
You know? I'm just, because, like, the doctor would be dead. Mm-hmm. So Donna wouldn't be here, like, quite apart from also the doctor would not be here. But, like, they needed her to go so far back. They could have just kept Donna from getting here specifically in any number of ways. But they needed to go back enough that she had never even met him before. Mm-hmm. Which feels more significant than just we can't have you here to stop this one thing. It feels much bigger picture than that.
Well, yeah, because according to Rose, there's something about the doctor and Donna working together. Mm-hmm. Bringing Donna back to this choice that she made, turning left or right, mm-hmm. kept her from meeting the doctor, but also led to the doctor being dead, which to a lot of creatures out there is probably a pretty high goal.
Right.
So whatever they have planned, having the doctor dead is probably ideal.
And, like, I mean, we take their word for it that the doctor's dead, and we're assuming that the doctor is dead because the doctor's body allegedly was being wheeled out of there, and because all of these other things that we know the doctor start happening. Mm-hmm. So we could assume that he was gone because those things happen anyway.
Well, they said he was found underneath the Thames, and he died so quick he wasn't able to regenerate.
Right. I am not positive that that is true. They could be mistaken. It's not like they know everything about how the doctor works.
But he was gone. The TARDIS was abandoned. They found the TARDIS underneath the Thames, too.
Right. Which is like, are we dealing with some weird, evil, alternative reality version of the doctor now? Who comes back all angry and bloody and vengeful? I don't really see that, but I could throw that into my spitballing.
Maybe it's doubtful since that parallel universe was destroyed because Donna made a new choice.
Right, that's true. So that wouldn't have happened in this version that way.
Right.
Because, yeah, I just keep thinking about, like, whether or not there's a possibility that they were wrong about that, and the fact that Donna's like, what she did to save the doctor was apparently convincing him to back off on the Spider Woman.
Yeah, because he took
was,
it
like, going too far.
He took it too far, and he was taking it too far, and he would have destroyed everything around him and himself. She saved his life
by stopping him from his own impulses.
Yes,
which is part of why I was like, is this, like, villain that they're up against him at the whim of his impulses at this point, like, because I've been saying Doctor is suspect to me in some of the choices that he has made, and it is not too far off. There wouldn't have to be too many changes to the way that he has handled things here and there to make him a bad guy.
Well, that's true, but that shows what having Donna around and forcing him to think about his actions in a way that his previous companions just weren't doing.
Right.
It saves him and it keeps him in check. It keeps him from being unchecked, where he just does whatever he feels and doesn't control his own emotions.
So I don't know. If nothing that happened in the version of reality that we saw is still true, I don't have theories because I get too easily mixed up This is why time travel stuff fucks with me.
Well, the parallel universe that was created around Donna was eradicated as soon as she was able to break the bond with that time beetle.
Right.
So.
Time beetle. Would that this beetle were a time beetle.
But there is obviously something happening because Bad Wolf.
Right.
And Rose, while she was able to push into the parallel universe, she's also been able to appear in this one.
Now, Bad Wolf, was that the Daleks initially the first time?
Yes. That was the season 1 finale. When they were in that space station.
This isn't the Daleks again, though. Like, no offense to y'all Daleks out there, but y'all aren't that smart. I feel like pulling this shit off feels a little bit beyond what y'all are capable of doing. But, I may misjudge you. I might not be right about that. But yeah, I feel like, if anything, we're going to find out that, like, the first encounter with Bad Wolf, those Daleks were, like, a pawn of somebody else. That they weren't even, like, the thing. But I don't know.
So, Catherine Tate had the flu during the filming of this episode.
Girl. And she looked good, too.
Yeah.
Bless her.
I don't know how she did it.
The parts where she was, like, living in that ghetto because she had, like, a strained look that was fitting to the situation.
Yeah.
So I guess having flu works out in those cases. But yeah. Oh, that sucks, though.
And, like, last week's episode was the first time where it was a companion light episode. But the reason that it needed to be was because she had so much that she needed to do with this episode.
Right.
And this episode...
This is, like, mostly her...
Yeah, this is
David Tennant's in it for, like, what, 5 minutes?
If that. I read he was only needed 1 day. Mm-hmm. This was the Dr. Light episode, and last week was the Companion Light episode, which has never happened before. But it was necessary because of the sheer amount of stuff that Catherine Tate had to do in this episode.
Right.
Usually the Dr. Light episodes are very sort of, like, very different. It was Love and Monsters, which is, super goofy, and then Blink. Those are the 2 main Dr. Light episodes that we've seen. But this is totally different. This is a much more serious, not goofy in any way, other than a weird beetle. Because I don't want to say that Blink was goofy, because it wasn't. But it wasn't disturbing in the same way that this, the concept of, like, changing the entire world in the way that this did.
And Blink wound up kind of having, like, a happy ending, weirdly. I mean, not really. That's unfair to say happy, but it felt, like, resolved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The actress who played the fortune teller has been in another episode before.
Has she?
She played that alien Chanto. The one that was with the professor.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was her.
Ah, okay. Well, that's fun for her. She got to play somebody, like, overly submissive, and then she got to be, like, very sinister.
Yeah. Plus, this time she got to show her face instead of being covered in some weird alien makeup.
True.
And, Billie Piper stated in the Doctor Who Confidential episode that she had forgotten how to play Rose, and so she needed to go back and watch past episodes to remind herself how to play that character.
That's fair. I mean, Rose has a really different feel in these episodes, which would make sense anyway within character, because she's gone through a ton of shit, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Did she have Invisalign on or something? Because did you notice that, like, occasionally while she was talking?
I feel like she has an overbite. maybe.
I feel like it was more than that.
I feel like it seemed like her overbite was a little more pronounced than it used to be. But I don't know. I did notice that she was thinner.
Was she? I didn't notice that.
She seemed to be thinner. But this may have been also filmed around the same time that she was doing Confessions of a Secret... Or what was it called? Yeah, Confessions of a Secret Call Girl or Secret Life of a Call Girl. That Showtime show that she did.
Didn't know about it.
Oh, it was really good. It was really good. She played a call girl in London who, like, her family and friends don't know she's a call girl. And it was like the first main thing she did after Doctor Who, and like very, very different, where she's like pretty naked a lot and having a lot of sex, and not Rose Tyler in any way. It's also a really good show. But she had to kind of lose all that baby fat that she had for all those nude scenes. And I noticed, not that she was ever not a thin girl, but she seemed more toned. Like her clothes fit a bit differently than they used to on this show. Even though she's wearing like the same type of clothes.
Yeah.
She just seemed a little more fit.
Well, I am very curious to see if she turns up again. Because you could easily have it be like she got involved in this one thing in order to fix what went on with Donna. But she could turn up again anyway, like, I don't know. So part of me like wants to see it because I want the Doctor to get to see her again because he was just so heartbroken. But on the other hand, I feel like if he gets to see her again, that means that things are going really, really badly. So I don't want him to get to.
So put yourself in the place of the fans who loved the Doctor and Rose together. Mm-hmm. And imagine the reaction if they don't ever get to see each other. I'm not saying one way or the other, whether you're right or wrong. The thought experiment of what would the fan outcry be?
Yeah, fair.
Because it could go either way. And it would be such a trolly sort of thing for the showrunners to be like, yeah, she's popped in and out of this whole season, but they've never seen each other. He's never even noticed.
Right.
Every time she's popped up, he's not looking at the screen her face is on. So it'd be kind of funny.
I would love it if they had the balls to just be like, nope, sorry. Missed opportunities. What are you going to do? Because that's really gutsy.
Look, we ended their
I'm
story.
I'm in a similar place. Spoilers for the first 2 seasons of The Magicians, for anybody who is interested in watching that. Are you interested in watching that? Have you watched it?
I'm in season 2.
You are?
I don't care about spoilers. The show doesn't mean that much to me. So.
All right. Well, let's get into this for 30 seconds, and then, guys, you can fast forward it, and then I'll be done. But there's a character on that, and I won't get into too much detail, who apparently dies.
Mm-hmm. I've gotten that far.
And they do not stay dead. And when they first die, I was giving the show so many props for having the guts to kill a character that had been pretty significant, that I thought was like really had gotten a worthy death and a send-off that mattered. And all of this, like, just really like, wow, they really did something there that was like unexpected and yada, yada, yada. And then they just like turned around and totally undid that. And somebody made a comment during like the crowdcast and was like, well, this is done by the same creators who did Supernatural. And I've only seen like 2 seasons of that show, but from the way they said it, I was like, oh, okay. So these are people who like to do fan servicey kind of things. And they're not going to commit to this character being dead because they just want to make everybody happy, and they want to do something easy and bring back a character that they like, that is already written, that will have a good reception. And I was very sad because they did indeed go in that direction. And it remains to be seen whether or not that was actually a bad decision in and of itself. But I personally was like kind of disappointed because I thought that they did something really daring. And then they undid it, essentially.
I was going to go on the defense for Supernatural, but they do that, so. I can't even say that whoever said that was wrong because, yeah, they do that. And it's always really great when we see the people that we were heartbroken that they died and now suddenly we're like, oh, hey, nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's like it's really gotten to a point for me on most television that when somebody dies, unless it's really clear that this is the kind of show that's not played around with, I don't get that upset about it because I don't trust that they will stay dead usually. And it doesn't even have to be like, you know, it's just like they figure out all kinds of ways like, oh, we're going to do a flashback episode and here they are again. Or, oh, we're going to have it be haunted by somebody and there they are again. Or we're going to have like, you know, I think I even said when I was talking about the magicians, like, oh, an alternate reality where that person's still alive, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like Rose coming back and the doctor and her meeting up again and talking would feel the same as bringing back a character who had been dead. Because we know she's not dead. It's not the same.
Yeah.
I don't feel this way about it. But I do think it would be kind of boss if they were just like, yeah, we know you wanted it, but guess what? Life sucks. Ha ha. It happens. She accomplished something amazing and you're just going to have to be happy with that.
Yeah.
Just be like, damn, okay, show. But yeah, I like hurting people, I guess. So fans, sorry. I'm working on writing something and getting back into it right now. And everybody just be ready for me to not care about your feelings if this ever gets finished.
You know, sometimes, like, I think about deaths on, like, Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. They're always permanent. Luckily.
Nah.
I mean, who came back?
Girl.
Who came back on Game of Thrones?
Jon Snow?
Oh,
anyone?
That's just Jon Snow. Like, he
Beric
was never going to stay dead.
Anyone?
That's different.
There are a bunch of characters in Song of Ice and Fire.
I'm thinking about someone like, well, on the show specifically, like what hurt really bad was like Barristan Selmy or Hodor. Like stuff like that.
I wanted to be hurt by Barristan Selmy so bad, but I did not care.
I mean, he's one of my favorite characters in the book, so I was really fucking angry. More than anything, I was just so fucking angry about it. I'm still angry about it. But it hurt because I love, or, you know, my precious Oberyn, which, you know,
yeah,
knew it was coming, but still, like, but yeah, the magic stuff with certain characters, I guess, is true. There were some permanent deaths on that show.
Yeah, there were a lot of, like, he really got us thinking, like, oh, nobody's safe with Ned. But then he started to backtrack on that a lot and just be like, well, you know, who knows? And pretty much everybody after that, he was just like, eh.
No,
but
most of them stayed dead. Just not the ones that
most of them, yeah. When you kill, like, you know, thousands of people in a war book, yeah, most of them I fucking hope. Until the White Walkers, of course.
I mean, where's Tywin coming back?
Yo. Tywin is a White Walker. I see it.
It would have been, God, even Tywin just getting to come back because of the, you know, R'hllor magic would have been something to behold.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
No.
All right.
We don't have any new reviews. There's no bingo update, and yeah, that's usually my stuff. So no.
Okay. Well, everybody, thank you all so much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed the episode. How many episodes remain in this season? 2
more. And before we hang up, I do have something to ask you about that. But yeah, there's 2 more.
Okay. Wow. All right. Almost at the end of the season. Well, guys, it's coming. I'm not excited about it because I feel like we're going to have to say goodbye to Catherine Tate and I don't want to do it. I don't like it. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.